Hey guys, welcome to Faith, Family, and Football. I'm your host, Jordan Capel, a believer, a family man, and a lifelong student of the game. Inside this podcast, we dive into what matters most: a strong faith, a strong family, and a strong foundation through the game we love. Every episode will share stories, lessons, and encouragement to help you lead with purpose on the field, at home, and in your walk with God. And at the end of the day, coach with confidence. Let's get after it. Hey guys, welcome to Faith Family Football Podcast. This is your host, Jordan Capel. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about slanting front and how to use them within your defense to create productivity and get more athletes on the field. So a little bit of background about me. I'm actually originally from a 4-3 read and react defense. That's where I've spent most of my defensive coaching career. And if you don't know anything about a read and react system or a two-gap style system, I'm going to give you a little bit of insight about that. So in a 4-3 two-gap system, or within our 4-3 two-gap system, we taught all the defensive linemen how to read and react based off the blocks that they got. So defensive ends would be responsible for ripping inside if they got a man block from the offensive tackle, but at the same time, if they got outside zone, they're responsible for fighting outside for C gap. And if they got a down block for a double team, they'd squeeze and spill just like you do in most systems. The issue with this is that it's very difficult to train athletes to do this stuff efficiently and effectively over time. You have to have a really good training system in place. So 7 through 12, you need to be doing the same thing, and the kids need to know it by the time they get to high school, because if they kind of start learning the system their sophomore year, they may not be as good as you want them to be, right? Which obviously a lot of that comes down to generic athleticism and things like that. But we were really good at it. In 2022, we won a state championship running the 4-3 two-gap system. And a lot of that was credited to the 4 down linemen that we had. Now, we had some phenomenal guys on the field in the secondary, outside linebackers, middle linebacker. I mean, they all made it work. That's why we were able to make it as far as we were. But when you look at the things that we had to do in order to be successful, we needed those 4 guys up front to know their job and do it really, really well, which they did. Following that season, it was kind of like, here we go. We get rid of a lot of these linemen, right? They graduate and so forth. And we look down the line and it's, man, like we're kind of thin on defensive linemen. And you begin to see where the turnover in high school is a problem with the 4-3 system or a read and react system. You have to continuously produce kids who are ready to go into that system, because it's not as simple as lining up in a 3 and a 1 and anchoring that gap. Now you're having to train the kids to distinguish the style of block that they get while also attacking the aiming point and being ready to make a play on the ball. And as you begin to add more and more detail into those things, it's harder and harder for kids to play fast. And they don't get to play fast until they really understand what the type of block that they get is and how their job following that block. So with that in mind, we began to look at ways to get more kids on the field, because following that year, we still had some pieces that were really good, but we had some inexperienced players who just didn't get a lot of reps because the guys that before them that were just graduated were really good. But as you go on, you get injuries and things like that, you begin to start looking at the bench and say, how can we get some of these kids out here and put them in a position where they can be successful? Because the read and react is not it. And that's where we kind of began playing with slanting. Like, we had always slanted, but it never became a frequent thing, if that makes sense. It was most of the time we were going to play our 4-3 base rules, bend, don't break style defense. And if you begin rolling people out there that don't know how to read and react based off of blocks, it begins to gas you, and it happens fast, right? Because now B gap's wide open, your outside linebacker can't get there, and boom, the run's breaking. So what we began doing is we began slanting the interior defensive lineman. So what we would do, we would line up in our 4-3. So we would do twos and fives. And I'll kind of draw it up in the chalk talk here in just a minute. But we would begin slanting the interior defensive lineman. The defensive ends would practically play the same. They just had to know which way the B gap player was. So they had to know whether or not their B gap was open or closed. And that would kind of determine whether or not they were going to still rip inside the B gap on a man block. So now instead of all four defensive linemen needing to know how to read and react, you're really just managing it with your two defensive ends. And out of the two, one of them has a B gap player because we'll slant to that side and he can stay outside, but he's just ready to spill it. As you do those things, you begin to see that athletes that don't or would not have gotten as much playing time, I won't say don't, but would not have gotten as much playing time because they didn't know how to read and react, are beginning to get a lot more reps. Well, that benefits you because now your dudes that can read and react, who might also have to play offensive line, they're getting a blow and getting some water in to go make it a run on the next offensive series. While these two other dudes are fresh and they're in here slanting and going. Boom, boom, boom. And you begin to see the productivity from slanting because we're getting back in the backfield, we're causing havoc, we're wrecking it. And that style of defense began to appeal more and more to me. And because the training for it is so much easier than the read and react. Like teaching a kid to slant, to get to the gap, how to coach it correctly, it's much more efficient than having to teach the kids how to distinguish the different style of blocks and repping it over and over and over. I can rep the first steps. They just need to know which way to slant. They need to know their rules once they get to their gap. So as we began doing this more and more, I just began to fall in love with the idea of slanting. And hopefully by the end of this video, you're going to be able to find something that can work for you and your system, and you can use it inside your coaching toolbox and take it back to your program in a way that can help you produce more success on your Friday nights or game nights, whatever that is for you. So make sure you stay tuned. We're going to do a little chalk talk after this short video. Hey coach, real quick, if you're getting value from this episode, I've got a small favor to ask. Take a second and share this video with another coach who could use a little extra encouragement today. Whether it's a teammate, someone in your district, or even a coach you look up to, pass it along. The mission here is to help build coaches up just like you, and it starts by spreading the word. So hit that share button, send it to a friend, and let's keep making an impact together. Thanks for being part of the team. Hey guys, welcome back. We're going to talk a little bit about the slanting front that we use within our 4-3 and how you can use that within any four-man front for you and your program. So right here I have what we pretty much lined up in all season long, minus getting in a tight end package. I just drew it up against doubles, but you have twos, which is going to be head up on the guards, fives, outside shoulders of the tackles, and you have typical 0-0 linebacker and apex outside linebackers. And this can look different if you see more 4-2, okay, but we were a 4-3, we wouldn't have anybody, and we would bump down if they were a heavy running team, pull the safety down, and I'll just kind of go over that stuff here in just a minute. But to kind of give you an idea of the thing that we did in order to help our defensive line be successful is when we put our quick guys out there, so we would have our read and react style, our A group if you want to call them that, it didn't matter, but our two guys that went out there and played a lot of snaps, first, they were going to be our read and react. And then as they kind of start fatiguing the offensive guards, and we could start spelling in these quick guys and we could slant. So on your fives, okay, which is your defensive ends, you would have your two gap system pretty much in play unless they had a three tech. So pretend that this guy is our Sam, okay? So if we slant strong, we're going to slant to Sam's side. All right, so we slant boom here, and he would take A gap. Well, if you think about your typical 3 and 1, now you're just playing with a 3 and a 1. We wouldn't box anything though. So if you're a box team and you teach the defensive end to box, which some 4-2 people will, depending on how they want to do this, but we would spill it out to our outside linebacker, okay, who is right here. So he would come here and he would have this. So if this guard pulled, he would still squeeze and spill. Mike would scrape, okay? But What you notice here is on the back side. So this guy within our 4-3 would still be reading his offensive tackle. And what I mean by that is if he stepped straight at him and did a man block, he would rip inside. All right. If he tried to down block, he would be squeezing, looking for anything. And we were able to do this even with a slanting defensive line because we taught these guys which way they were slanting, and they would need to know whether their B gap was open or closed. If they had a open B gap, they would tighten their splits. If they had a closed B gap, which means the defensive tackle is slanting to my B gap. Okay, so this guy has a closed B gap. All right, he would widen out, and he's an aggressive C gap player, which allows this guy to loosen up a little bit because now he doesn't have a C gap or a B gap responsibility, right? All he has to worry about is getting there if the defensive end spills it. So just to clarify that, okay? What we would do is we would take them, we put them 22. 22 means I'm head up on the guard, and we're slanting strong or slanting weak. Boom, boom. Slant strong, slant weak. All right? This guy would be an aggressive C-gap player. All right? So he's attacking the outside shoulder. He's gonna hold on to C-gap. If he gets a down block, he's ready to spill it still. He's not going to box it. All right? He would box. I would suggest boxing. It's like if you had a 4-2 and there was nobody out here to get force, I would box with the defensive end. But right here we have a Sam, okay? He's going to be force player, so he's going to be the guy. This guy who has an open B gap is now tighter. All right? And so the terminology that we would kind of use is if I'm wide, I'm going shoe to shoe, which means my inside shoe on his outside shoe. If I'm a tight 5, that means I'm going to put my inside shoe on his crotch. So on film, you could barely distinguish it, but I know as a defensive end, when I line up, if I have an open B gap, I'm going to line up shoe to crotch, and I have B gap responsibility, which means if I get a man block, I'm ripping inside. All right. Now, this isn't what I do anymore, but this is just kind of how you could do it within a 4-man front. If you wanted to do it within a 4-2 and you didn't have this guy over here to spill it to, most of the time what you'll see is these defensive ends just end up boxing the play. And so instead of spilling or wrong shouldering, the pulling guard, now you just square them up, keep my outside arm free, and I'm forcing the play back inside. But we ran a 4-3, so we had these extra guys on the perimeter, and we had the mic coming. So we wanted to make sure that we would just spill it, and we would chase everything to the sidelines. It really depends on what your system is and how you want to handle that. If you wanted to slant the whole defensive line, you could still do this within a system, but you just have to be aware of where your open gap is going to be, okay? And so instead of just slanting the 2 inside linemen, now we could line up in 2s and tight 5s across the board. And so if we wanted to slant strong, right? So I'm going to slant strong, running back over here. We want to slant strong because the mesh is going to happen this way. Just pretend like that's the game plan. All right. So now everybody is slanting. Okay. So now I have a slow player here, a quick player here. He's ready to come fit fast. Boom, boom, boom. He's going to step up because he has no C-gap help. He's spying the open A gap. And if you did that within a 4-2, one person's always going to end up with a closed gap. Okay? So what I mean by that is that let's take this backer over here. I'm going to erase this real quick. Take this backer, bump him in the box. All right? Bump him in the box. Nickel's out here. He's lined up over here. Well, now you have your slant in the defensive line. You only have one open gap. So this guy has no gap responsibility. He's literally getting the key, his guard to the mesh, and watching the flow, right? And he's just going to be pretty much a free hitter. He's going to go float to the ball. He'll play this A gap, he'll help with this A gap, but he's screaming over here now. I think that if you do this and you get comfortable with it, it's really easy to coach, and you can have a single call that tells the whole line that they're slanting. And you can do the same thing weak. Okay, so if this was your Sam or whatever it is, all right, in your system. Okay, but if you got a strong side linebacker, you're going to slant to him. You could say slant strong, all right. And then if you wanted to slant weak, it's slant weak. If you wanted to just do slant your two inside guys, then you could just slant, have a different call for them, go 22, and you can just call boom. All right. And if it's a whole line stunt, then you can do, 44, or whatever you want to do, however you want to call it, and then tag your slant strong or slant weak. It's a really easy way to kind of cut off flow, get a change up of your, especially if you're traditionally just a 3 and a 1 over and over and over and over. I think that is probably the biggest downfall of most defenses, is that they just do not change up to their fronts, right? And so whatever you can kind of do on the defensive line, whether it's stemming, slanting, okay, just a different front, even going from 31 to double ones, okay, that causes havoc because you're constantly testing the offensive line rules. And that's why people had so many problems with our twos when we were running the 4-3, is they would be like, they wouldn't know how to block if they weren't in a 3 and a 1. They would lose their mind when they were in a 2 or they were head up. And it caused a lot of issues for most offensive lines. And so when you begin to kind of tweak that, and you're comfortable enough coaching it, then you can kind of do a lot of different things. If you start slanting and you start coaching it, you will get comfortable with it. It's just a matter of getting comfortable with the terminology. And realistically, if you've been coaching defensive line, you already know this. You've probably done this, but you just may not have a fascination with slanting. But I promise you, if you start doing it, I'm not saying you have to base in it like I do, but you start doing it, you'll find moments in games where you're like, man, this is a great time to slant. And then you'll do it, and it'll be an explosive play. And you'll be like, man, why haven't we been doing this for X amount of years, right? Why are we just now doing this? I think that it's just another toolbox, and it's super simple for kids to get, and it allows the defensive line to play super fast. And when you combine all those things together, it just breeds productivity for your defense. And that's what you really want as a coach, is you want something that's simple, that you can change up your look, change it up on the fly, and kids can understand and comprehend and do really fast and go out there and perform on game day like they know what they're doing. And slanting is just one of those things that makes a huge difference. Kids love to do it. Coaches who call it enough love to call it. And I think that it just can change the way that you kind of view a traditional front and be like, boom, here we go. Now we're going to play 22 and we're going to slant. And it gets you out of your 31. Maybe it's a little bit out of your comfort zone. But if you just do it a couple of times, you'll see where it can kind of be beneficial. And as you begin to have more and more formations, and you have issues calling the strength, like, so you kind of think of like 31 is your strong side. So like wherever your 3 is, that's your strong side. Let's just pretend like that. Okay. Well, if you start getting tails and kids start getting confused on the strong side, weak side, or whatever the 3 is supposed to be for the game plan, well, then you can go in at halftime and say, hey, we're going to go 22, and I'm just going to slant you strong or weak. All right, we're just going to do it. We're going to do it on second downs. All right, I'm going to call it. I'm going to call 22, okay? We're just going to do it on second downs. Well, you don't have to tell them that, but that can be part of your game plan, just to change it up, okay? Because they're killing us. They're killing us. They get in the split back look, okay? They've been killing us in the split back look. We're not getting set right in the 3 and the 1. Our front's been wrong all night long. So I'm going to call it, say 22, slant strong. Boom. 22, slant weak. Boom. Right? And it just allows you to have a quick fix within your system, and kids can effectively do it and know how to get there. And then you go back to that thing we were talking about earlier. It allows you to play kids that may not be traditionally good defensive linemen. So they're not big bodies. They're not able to anchor a gap, but they're quick. they're fast, they're good with their hands, they can get off blocks. And that's kind of where slanting gives them the advantage. And it just allows you to kind of add a little twist, a little wrinkle within your system. And it's something that's easy to coach and fun to coach and fun to execute from the athletic standpoint. Coach, if you're looking to take your defense to the next level, I've got something special for you. I've just released my Dynamic 3-4 defensive playbook. This is a PDF full of blitz packages, coverage adjustments, run fits, and coaching tips that you can install immediately, whether you're facing spread teams or power-heavy offenses. This playbook gives you the flexibility and aggressiveness you need to succeed. So if you're serious about shutting teams down and confusing quarterbacks, head over to SidelineSuccessAcademy.com and grab your copy of the Dynamic 3-4 playbook. Now let's get back to our original episode. Welcome back. We're going to be talking a little bit about how to coach the slanting portion of the defensive line. Just some quick, easy tips that can kind of help your defensive line get good at it, even if I'm not going to base out of it like what I would do, and help you be able to coach your kids and get them successful. So here we have essentially a guard and a tackle with two defensive linemen. I put them in 2s and 5s. I don't personally line up in 2s and 5s. We're an on front, so we line up in 0s and 4s. So we're going to be head up on everybody and we're going to slant. But what you want to do is make sure that your kids, when they are slanting, are either in a 4-point stance or they want to have the hand that they're slanting to down and then that foot back. And if you don't have to be that super picky about the hand placement, but you definitely want the foot that is going to the gap back. So what I mean by that is if I'm this guy right here and I'm slanting to this B gap, okay, so for him, he'd be facing this tackle, so it'd be his right foot. He's stepping with his right foot right now and trying to secure that gap. And he wants to be able to rip across his face. All right, and so if I'm slanting here, let's say both guys are slanting the same way. Now we're both going to the right, so both of our right feet should be back. And what you want to teach your kids is either you are going to still the gap now, all right? This is one way that you can do it. Still the gap now. I'm going to rip across his face. I'm not even going to collision him. I'm just going to the gap. And once I get to the gap, I'm going to get a yard behind the football. I'm going to settle down. I'm going to find the football. I always want to make sure that whenever I win the gap, right? Once I win the gap, my eyes should immediately go up to find the football. And I want to look inside first, because if you think about where's the ball going to be coming from 90% of the time for the defensive line, it's going to be from the inside because it's got to be snapped there, correct? Okay, so as long as it's a good snap and it wasn't some weird thing, okay, there's going to be a quarterback back there, running back, mesh, whatever it is. So I'm going to slant and my eyes immediately go inside towards the quarterback. I'm looking for anything that could be coming, and then I'm going to get flat down the line. What you want to make sure that you're doing is when you're dipping and ripping, I want nice pad level, and I want a rip across with the opposite arm. So if I'm stepping with my right foot inside gap, I'm ripping across with my left arm, and then vice versa. If I was slanting the opposite way, I must be stepping with my left foot first, ripping across with my right arm. And then we want to emphasize a violent rip. We want to get rid of those arms. Okay, we're ripping up. I always kind of just imagine like an animated uppercut, like I'm a violent push, boom, going through all the way through his arms, right? You want to finish in a high uppercut position. What this does is it teaches kids as you're going down, you want to make sure that my pad level's low enough. I want to reach and touch the ground and then violently rip up, okay? Now, you have different slanting styles, so when I teach the two interior linemen, okay, so we slant and collision with the two interior linemen. If I'm going to slant the whole line, sometimes I just steal a gap, but you have like go techs, which is just go now, and then you have your normal slanting techs, which is going to be I'm going to collision and then rip off. All right, so what this does with the collision is it makes sure that they can't just free release up to linebacker. I'm getting a piece of you before I go. And that step is more at the shoulder, okay? So like it's going to be, I'm going to step. So with this guy that's slanting to the right, I'm going to step to the right foot. I'm securing it, but my left foot is going to drive at his shoulder. And what that does is now I'm going to attack with both arms, or you can just do one arm, right? You can do one arm and rip, but you can attack both arms, and I'm looking at the near number. Okay, so if your jersey number has two numbers on it, you're going to hit the near number, the top corner number of what you're trying to get, and you're going to try and pin the shoulder and bicep, and then rip across his face. So that's a slant and collision versus a slant and go. Is there a benefit to each one? Possibly. I think that it really comes down to the athlete. As long as the athlete is getting into the gap and doing their job, then it doesn't really matter how they got there. But you want to supply them with toolbox and let each one kind of do what's best for them. And I don't ever want to like overcoach an athlete and say, no, you have to do it my way. But yeah, as you get it, you can be more technical about what they're doing. But when they first start out, you got to get them comfortable. So yes, they need to step with the correct foot. They need to win the gap, and then they need to find the football. And if they're doing those things correctly, then their productivity is going to go up, and then you can kind of start tweaking things. But a lot of times we get so focused on overcoaching something early on, right, that they're never getting it right because they're constantly failing and going backwards. But make sure that you kind of go through, you're emphasizing the step. Like they have to step to the gap. They got to win the gap, right? If they're taking a left foot step to go to the right gap, it doesn't make any sense. You're stepping in the opposite direction. So you want to make sure that my first step is always with the correct foot to the correct gap. It's always near foot to near gap. Okay, so if I'm slanting right, I'm going with my right foot to the right gap. Right? If I'm slanting left, it's my left foot to the left gap. Because what you end up doing is if I step right, if I take my left foot and I step right, what have my legs done? Well, now they're twisted up and I'm off balance. And it's very easy to pancake that way. And you just want to make sure that you emphasize that. As far as the slanting and go versus slanting and collision, that's totally up to you and what you feel like is best for your kids. Okay. And each one kind of has their own benefits. And I'm not going to tell you, okay, a smaller, faster kid, probably going to be better at a slant and go. Okay. A bigger, stronger kid, it's going to be better at a slant and collision. It's just physiologically makes more sense. So I kind of equip both within my kids and just make them decide what's best for them. I coach both. I teach both. Now, you may not want to, but that's just something that you can kind of dabble in and get good at. As you do it more and more, you're going to get more comfortable at teaching it, more comfortable at coaching it. It's a lot of the same stuff that you would normally see. Okay, you're still going to be coaching pad level. If they're not getting clean, then they're probably not extending and ripping it the same way that they're supposed to. Okay, if they slant and they get a double team, well, the double team rules still pretty much stay the same. Okay, you still want to either A, split the double team, or B, collapse in the hole. That can also depend on your style. Some people scrape over the top of double teams with their defensive line. I'm not big into that, but that could be you. I don't personally do it, but whatever double team rules you have, it still applies in your slanting position. So what you do matters a lot more about how you want to coach it and how you want to implement it in your system versus what I would do, okay? Because at the end of the day, it's your program, your athletes, your system. So make it your own. But I'm just trying to give you tools and tips and things that you can kind of do in order to help improve your program. All right. And so I want to wrap up today, kind of talk a little bit about Mother's Day. Since every single one of us does have a mother, right? Maybe not actively in our life, but we got to grow and love and appreciate them. And we got to appreciate our wives too. So if you look at Proverbs chapter 31, verses 10 through 31 and read that, it goes on to talk about the wife of noble character. And it opens up in verse 10 and says, a wife of noble character who can find? She is worth far more than rubies. And if you take a moment and think about your wife, or if you're not married, think about your mother and think about the things that they sacrifice on a daily basis for either yourself or your kids. And you look at them, and if you don't appreciate that, then you can be quick to lose it, right? And I think that the wisdom that's poured out within this proverb, even though it was several thousand years ago, okay, it still applies today. Your wife is something that was a blessing from God and is valuable within your home. And she's responsible for being the mother of your children. And then you go in, you look at your mom and the things that she had to do to help raise you and develop you into the person that you are today. And you look at that, and that's what your wife is currently doing for your kids. You need to take a moment and pause and be grateful for them and appreciate them because you never know when life might take that away from you. And I don't mean that in a harsh way, but in a reality check is, am I appreciating those women in my life that have been able to support me in ways that I haven't always fully understood? And if you go in and continue reading all the way down, which I really think you should, you look at verse 28. Her children arise and call her blessed. Her husband also, and he praises her. Many women do noble things, but you surpass them all. So make sure that you're appreciating your mom. Make sure you're appreciating your wife. Make sure you tell them Happy Mother's Day. And I appreciate you guys for watching this episode. And I hope that you got something valuable from it and you begin to incorporate slanting within your program. And if not, that's okay too. I won't take it too personal. But hopefully you got something from this. Hopefully you're able to take something valuable, add it to your coaching toolbox, and be able to use it and for the success of your program. God bless. Thanks for joining us on today's episode of Faith, Family, and Football. If you got value from this episode, make sure to subscribe so that you never miss a new drop. And don't forget, head over to SidelineSuccessAcademy.com to grab your free ebook, The 10 Things to Know Before You Start Coaching. And this applies to all coaches. Plus, for all my football coaches out there, you can grab my full 3-4 defensive playbook. And right now, you can save $10 with the code PODDISCOUNT10 at checkout. Again, that's PODDISCOUNT10. Thanks for hanging out with me. Stay strong in your faith, lead your family, and coach with confidence. Catch you next time.